there is this social conditioning that, we have to hustle alone. That lone wolf mentality is the only way to get through. And you know yourself better than anybody else. You have to trudge through the mud and like you have to do it by yourself. That is anti-human, right? Like OG humans lived in community. And so I want to rehabilitate the value of interdependence in our society, the value of connection and community in our society. You don't have to do the work of your life's journey alone. You get to do this in connection. You get to invest in being connected as you grow and as you expand and as you evolve. And so I want to normalize saying, I don't want to be alone in this journey. I don't want to have to do this by myself. And if you're feeling that, if you've been like, I've been doing this alone for a really long time and it's not felt good, like I'm giving you permission. You don't need my permission, but I'm going to give it to you, that you can shift and you can start to do this work in community.
Welcome to the Mighty Emotions Podcast. I'm your host, Giselle. I'm a certified emotions coach, and I teach you how to respond better to your emotions so you can feel better in your life. My mission is to show you how to work with your emotions to become more emotionally resilient. Your emotions are not designed to overpower you. They're designed to empower you. On this podcast, I share what our emotions are, how to understand them and work with them, and the tools you need to reclaim your power and get unstuck from emotional pain so you can find fulfillment in your life again. I'm so glad you're here. Now let's get into the episode. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Mighty Emotions Podcast, another exciting episode because we have a guest again. I'm so grateful for my guests, and this one is no different. Today we have Candace, the Dream Doula. The name alone should let you know what we're working with today. Candace is a multi-passionate entrepreneur who empowers modern-day revolutionaries and culture disruptors to transform the world with their unique magic and creations without sacrificing their mental, emotional, and physical health and wealth. So very aligned with, the work that we're doing. It's all about caring for people's souls. On a human side of things, Candace is a spark of joy. If you don't follow her, the name Candace the Dream Doula, all applicable social media accounts, Instagram for sure, it'll be linked below. But she's always dancing, always hype, so full of energy and light. So thank you for being on the podcast and sharing that with the listeners today.
I am so grateful to be here. When I think about podcasts that really align with my soul and align with what I need and align with what I'm trying to expand and multiply and amplify in the world, this is it. So thank you, thank you, thank you for the work that you're doing and allowing me to be a part of it.
Oh, thank you. Okay, let's dive in with how you, because as we know in the helping space, in the service space, it's always kind of derived or generated from our own journeys and our own becomingness and our own discoveries, self-discoveries that we make. And so I want to know how your journey has been to go from wherever you were, letting us know, to figuring out that you could change the world as you without sacrificing your humanness.
Beautiful. So I'll start by saying I have always been the oddball out in life. And that is kind of contextualized my human journey. I grew up in the inner city of Boston, and I love, being a part of like this big, loud, vivacious, bright, bold, Black family, right? Half my family's from the US. My dad's side of the family is from Trinidad and Tobago. And so I come from people who are full of light, who are full of brightness. But we grew up with struggle. We grew up with, challenges being in urban environments in terms of like social interactions and violence in the community and things of that nature. And that's definitely something that I didn't necessarily experience a ton myself, but my parents grew up through it, and that's what conditioned them. And so it caused them to make choices for what they wanted for my life that were reflective of that truth. So even though I grew up in the inner city and I was born and raised there, I also went to a prep school outside of the city, in one of the most affluent parts of Massachusetts.
Mm.
So almost immediately there was like this juxtaposition in my life of culture, of environment, of people, of lived experience. And honestly, I didn't feel like I fit into either one of them. I felt like my identity was at least part of it was always at odds with some part of my environment, some part of the community that I was in. And it was interesting because even though that was my kind of inner truth, my external truth was that I was highly successful, highly ambitious, got good grades, was well liked. Um, so the external experience, what other people were observing, was very different from what I was kind of internally navigating. And so from a very young age, I wrestled with myself. I wrestled with my community and my environment and trying to feel like I could make sense of life in a way that felt comfortable, that felt peaceful, that I wasn't constantly fighting with me and with the world around me. And that just, was a thread line throughout my whole life journey. We can go into as much detail as you want. I'll let you ask follow-up questions, but
Yeah.
I think learning to find peace with myself, being able to lean into being multi-passionate, being able to be lean into being multicultural and not just on a level of like my ethnic background, but multicultural in terms of the environments that have kind of shaped me and the different parts of who I am on the inside that have shaped me. Like really being able to break the molds, disrupt the social norms. I call myself the leader of the anti-status quo movement, because it really like I had to claim a power of saying I don't have to let my life be dictated by anybody else. Because for a long time I navigated deep sadness, deep depression, deep anxiety, that was rooted in going the opposite direction first, trying to fit in, trying to align with what I saw in the inner city where my family was, and also in the affluent neighborhood where my
Mm.
school was. So I got at a certain point, I got tired of squeezing myself into something that I knew that I wasn't, and feeling that inner turmoil was exhausting. I did it made me not want to live, and at some point I had that like breaking point and I didn't want to live that way anymore. And so I I said, okay, how do I reclaim my power? How do I trust myself and like take a level of agency that is not normalized? Certainly not as like, the big breaking point for me was around the ages of like 16, 17, where I was really feeling like navigating suicidal ideation, suicide attempts. And I was like, this can't be what I was sent here for. Like, this can't be what my life is
Mm.
supposed to be like. This level of pain doesn't make sense. I
Yeah.
have family that loves me. I have a supportive community that want the best for me. Why am I in so much pain inside? Why do I hate myself so much? And I something within me, my soul communicated to me like it is because you're not honoring your truth. And so from
Yes.
that point forward, I became kind of hell bent on figuring out how I could clarify what my truth was for myself and then use all of the material that life was giving me access to really design and create a life that reflects that truth. And that's like my whole philosophy for how I navigate my own life. And then it's what I share with my community and client partners as well.
Oh my goodness. So much was said there. First of all, thank you so much for your vulnerability and your openness. I mean, you're not just like this on the podcast, obviously. This is just how you show up in the world, but it's a result, it's a product of the story that you shared, the journey that you've been on. This is where it's led you. So it's so powerful to me that ask yourself those questions at however young an age to say, like, no, like, I'm not accepting this. There has to be more. You got curious with yourself. And so the wisdom that was already within you, that's within all of us, was able to emerge and say, it's because you're out of alignment, Candace. Like, you're not in alignment. And you were able to hold on to that truth and follow that, and now shepherd and lead and guide other people to follow that. Because I mean, everything that you shared about the intersectionality of your life and your experience, it's so real for so many people. And there's so much shame that we navigate as we're getting all these conflicting messages from other people about who they see us, how they see us, and who they think we are, and the pressure to then like live up to that. So if you don't mind, like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but navigating that shame, I guess, and feeling that, like, what was that experience like for you?
There's a level of the shame was rooted in wanting to be something for my family, that I be hope for my family, right? Growing up, and my parents were 17 years old when I was born. And they sacrificed so much. My dad always tells me, like, you saved my life. And my mom always tells me, you were one of the greatest gifts. I was born on her birthday. She says,
Mm.
you're the best birthday gift I've ever received." And so I think the intention of their comments, and like of their affirmation, is not to put pressure on me, but I think I understood from a very young age, again, like, my existence is breaking generational trauma. My existence is a part of the evolution of my lineage, of my familial legacy. Um, and obviously I didn't have these words as a young kid, but I understood it somehow. And I think right, like, this is where this is why I lean into soul care, because I think I came into this lifetime with like so much wisdom in my soul. My soul has been here many, many iterations, many forms. And so I think I carried that pressure of so much like wisdom from many realms, from many lifetimes, from so much beyond like a child's experience, right? Um, and so I think the shame came from the weight of wanting to honor this legacy, wanting to honor this familial evolution, and feeling like there was only one path, one right way to do it.
Mm. Yeah.
Obviously, I live in the US, right? So like white supremacy is very loud
Mm.
in our in our culture,
Mhm.
with the kind of legacy of slavery. And so even though my parents didn't intend to do this, they were like, okay, here's the pathway. We've got you
Mm.
into really great educational systems. We will sacrifice and like do whatever we need to get you the opportunities to succeed. But they still were pointing me in one direction. And so even though my soul knew, like, yes, I'm in the right setting, your sacrifices matter, but I still have to do this my own way. I felt pressure to follow that path, and it took a while for me to, like, keep pressing and pushing against that only one right way culture, and say, "Yes, I can honor these sacrifices. Yes, I can honor these resources. Yes, I can honor these gifts and all of the love and all the affirmation, and I can still walk my own walk and walk my own path and off-road and come back to this path when I need to."
I'm hearing so much correlation between this journey that you're describing and the work that you do, because you knew you were a disruptor. Even if you didn't have the language, you knew that was a calling of yours. You knew that that was a purpose of yours, and all the forms that it took throughout your life. And there was the initial sacrifice that maybe you had to experience so that you could do the stepping back and saying, no, there has to be another way, and finding that different path, like you said. But you know the difference is what I'm saying between being the disruptor who sacrifices and being the disruptor who doesn't sacrifice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, every ounce of disruption requires a degree of sacrifice.
Mm.
And what became really important for me is, what am I sacrificing? I'm
Mhm.
always sacrificing something. I'm always choosing to, pursue something at the expense of something else, right?
Right.
And what really became important for me is I was unwilling, because of the pain that I've navigated, right? I've navigated chronic pain for a very long time.
Mhm.
I have battled with mental health challenges for a very long time, and I was so deeply sad, I had suppressed anger, right? Like,
Mhm.
I realized how much the conditioning was making me sacrifice that mental, emotional, and physical health and wealth.
Mm.
And the stance that I had to take at a certain point was like, I am no longer willing to sacrifice these things.
Hmm. Yes. And choosing yourself. Like that's where we get to in our healing journey where no, it's time that I really need to choose myself because otherwise I'm not going to be here tomorrow, you know?
Yeah.
Like you shared about what you're going through, and I resonate so deeply. I write about it in the intro of my book. Like I open it up talking about my attempted suicide and talking about how all the events that I share after that led to that and the pain that we carry when we are not supported with healing from those events, right? When it's just kind of like piling up, piling up, piling up, and we're not actually able to move through it. So I want to talk about what you talk about often, which is what I feel like kind of helped you get through this, which is the soul care. Like, can you share with the listeners like what is the soul care that you defined?
Yeah, for me, this is my signature framework, or the foundation of my signature framework. And it has three dimensions to it. The first dimension is self intimacy and self discovery work. I use this metaphor often, because everyone's heard it, right? I know that like the back of my hand. When you actually flip your hand over and look at the back of your hand and
I'm
look
doing it
at,
right now.
right? Like, everyone do this. You can see so many intricacies. You can see there are so many fine lines, there are so many details. You can see your scars, you can see the kind of birthmarks and things of that nature. There is so much to take in. Yet so few of us actually do that. We don't have like real true we don't really truly feel the weight of that phrasing. We just say it. And when I started to flip to the back of my hand and look at that level of detail, it illuminated for me that there's that same level of detail in my soul, right? There is that much intricacy in who I am and my beingness. And I want to know myself to that degree. I want to know my soul like the back of my hand. And so that's the foundational element of the work that I do with myself. This framework is one that I use and will use for the rest of my life. And I also do that for my community and my client partners, right? We explore and we navigate a relationship with ourselves that is deeply intimate. Because then what I believe from there is we move into self-aligned, soul-derived strategy. A lot of us are taking strategy from the world around us, right? Especially with the influx of social media. You have, I mean, you have so many self-care gurus, and I'm
Mhm.
one of them, right? But like,
Mhm.
we have so many self-care gurus saying, this is the way, this is what you need to do, this is the how. And they're not wrong. They're not sharing incorrect information,
Mhm.
but it is highly commodified. The self-care industry is a multi-billion dollar industry, capital B, billion. So at
Mhm.
the end of the day, that industry is not looking out for your soul. That industry is looking to garner wealth and um increase the amount of money that we're spending, increase consumption. There is nothing wrong with consuming specifically to support your soul. I have no problem with that. But if you have not done that first level of foundational work where you know yourself like the back of your hand, you can get trapped in the wheel of consumption and the wheel of overconsumption and the wheel of misaligned consumption. But when you have that first layer done and you start to do the self-derived, soul-aligned strategic work of self-care and strategic work of decision making and action taking, then all of your consumption, all of your spending, all the moves you make are reflective of your soul. Then you garner that happiness. Then you garner that, like, holy crap, my life is blowing my mind experiences. And like, I didn't even go into these level of details, but I cannot tell you how many experiences in my life I've been like, yo, I couldn't even have dreamt this up. This is
Mm,
so far beyond my wildest dreams,
mhm,
but they were all soul aligned. And there were action steps that I took that aligned with my soul that opened up the door for them, right? Some examples, I got a Fulbright uh, research fellowship right after graduating college. So many people along the way told me I shouldn't do that. Right? Like I had the actual call. You have to get approved by your university.
mhm.
I had members of the committee at my college being like, "Oh, you're not ready for this. You shouldn't do this." And of course that fired my soul up. And they
Mhm.
were not, honestly, from what I was presenting to them, they were not wrong. Right? Like I decided to apply a couple of weeks before the deadline. I didn't have my thing fully fleshed out. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So they weren't wrong from what they were perceiving, but what my soul knew was that this was aligned with my soul's purpose and path. And this was going to be an expansive experience that showed me more of who I am. So my soul was like, absolutely not. There's no way you're closing this door for me, right? Another example, I worked on a Broadway musical. When I tell people that, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you went to the, performers mecca." Like you did it. But
Yeah.
what they don't see is that was one of the most challenging experiences of my lifetime because I wasn't just there as an associate choreographer, which is what is on the playbill, right? That's what's in the program. I was there as a dream doula. I was there to help people go through the deep, painful
Mm,
work of birthing a creation and of laying to rest the parts of their identity that were in conflict with the birthing of that creation, right? So I use death and birth through the frameworks in my coaching and my support. I was there as a dream doula ultimately, right? Which is not something that was written out on paper. No one knows that. All your podcast listeners now know that, and my
yes.
close friends. But like, there are these things that if you are not in tune with your soul and you're not taking soul aligned action steps, and you don't have a strategic plan that's aligned with who you are, it makes life a lot more challenging, and it also can be an impediment to the universe gifting you what you need to cultivate what you desire, if that makes sense.
Yes,
then
absolutely.
Then the third layer of this work is my favorite part. It's self-affirmation and self-celebration. So we got a triple S framework here for soul care, right? This last piece is where people miss out. We wait for a pat on the back from everybody else. And then we're like, but I'm still sad. I'm still frustrated. I still don't feel good about this. And it's because we don't have the conditioning of celebrating ourselves and affirming ourselves. And I told a client this recently. I started to notice a significant shift in how she showed up, even in our coaching relationship, obviously in hearing, her stories and the way that she was interacting with people. But like just from our one-to-one relationship, I noticed a shift when she was able to readily and quickly affirm herself and how she just like energetically engaged in conversation. Conversation would flow more. She would look at me in the eyes. She would have this kind of like grounded easefulness to her when she affirmed herself and when she came into our discussions, ready to celebrate herself.
Mm,
That can often be the launch pin for your success, for your healing, for your expansion, for your evolution. Sometimes what you're seeking in life, what you're desiring most is primed and ready to go, but it needs you to pour in self-affirmation. It needs you to pour in that self-celebration. I'm getting the image of a science experiment, right? Like you can have all of the volcano
mhm. Yeah, yeah, like the beakers
right?
are pouring.
Like
Yeah.
you can have that volcano ready there, but until you pour that extra that the vinegar on top of the baking soda,
Mm,
that eruption's not going to happen. right? That there's a chemical reaction that has to happen on a soul level, and your self-celebration and self-affirmation is what initiates that chemical reaction. It starts that alchemy for you.
I That is so beautiful and such an amazing way to frame it, and the visuals of the back of your hand, and the science experiment. We've all tried that, like Mentos in the Coca-Cola bottle.
Mhm.
You know, just having that I love the visual elements that you've given to the listeners, because sometimes we hear words like soul, and we hear words like, spirit, and we hear these things and it seems so otherworldly, so difficult to grasp, so intangible. But the way you've made your framework is really made it more tangible, made it more accessible. It's like, yes, you need to first, and I love that there's a flow to it. It's like the same with the method that I create. I realized on my own journey that, yeah, there were a lot of people sharing a lot of great things, but they were kind of all over the place. Like, they were kind of out of order. And sometimes we try to do these things and we think that doesn't work, but we just got to flip the order, right? Like, if we really start by looking at ourselves and developing that relationship with ourselves, the ability to nurture ourselves, I also believe that that is really the foundation of everything, right? Because when we are willing to be with ourselves, it carries us throughout our whole life. Like I shared briefly today in my live, like wherever you go, there you are, and if there's so much inner conflict, if you're always criticizing yourself, if you're always beating yourself up, you can't close the door on that person. It's within you, you know,
Mm,
but also the reminder that your soul and your identity are not necessarily enmeshed. Like, there is an identity you, an ego you, like people like to talk about, and then there is your soul, like who you are at your core. And for me, that translates into the feelings that we have in our body, the physical sensations, the intuitive gut pings that we have, like you were sharing about. They thought you weren't ready, and maybe on paper you weren't ready, but you had that intuitive knowingness. And you shared a little bit about how you felt like you were always really wise, but how have you cultivated that intuitive knowingness? Like, do you spend time, when you talk about spending time with yourself and getting intimate with yourself, can you expand a little bit on like what that is like?
yeah. I'm actually on a psychic development journey. I it's funny, I was like, "Oh, I've been doing this my whole life." Like
Mm.
I've been just perceiving things my whole life, and I grew up in a with a Christian background, so like saying you were psychic, saying you were a witch, like
Mm-mm.
no
No,
way.
no.
And part of my family being Trinidadian, like witchiness, absolutely not. There was like a hard no for that. And again, this is like where white supremacy culture comes in, and it like erases
Hmm.
the truth. We all are psychic. We all are intuitive. And because that gave us power, it allowed us to understand that we are the embodiment of divine energy. That had to be erased,
Right, that
right?
was a problem. Hmm.
That cultivates too much freedom. So I've been on this journey of reclaiming my spiritual gifts, reclaiming my psychic power, and I've just emerged into a deeper level slash a higher level, a more expansive expression of this. And so there are three key spiritual gifts that I'm now tracking have been with me my whole life. The first is movement. I access divine energy. I access healing. I access clarity through movement. I've been dancing since I was 3 years old. And
Mm.
it's it's interesting because this is one of those tools and those forms that like I was externally on the ego level celebrated. I was always quote unquote good at it. Um, what I what I've now understood is like I was always able to showcase my soul, and people want to see your soul. People, that's like the most
Yes.
potent part of your essence. So because I was able to do that, people were celebrating me and affirming me, and it in a way watered down that power. But I accept it and I'm grateful for it. I'm glad to be a good dancer. I appreciate that. And it has opened up so many beautiful doors for me. But like the spiritual element of that is I've always been able to meet myself through dance and meet divine
Mhm.
power through movement and being embodied. So that's now morphed to so many different things: yoga, stretching, choreographed dance, but also like ecstatic dance. Movement is central to how I explore my spirituality. Another has been my voice. And so speaking, being on podcasts, singing, I've never have called myself a singer. I'm more inclined to call myself a worshiper because I
Mm.
access the power of my voice in that setting of like praising God. But like when I'm connected to source in a singing relationship, singing dynamic, I get this like ethereal voice. It hearing it sometimes like blows my mind. And so that happens not with singing, but that also happens when I am in speaking engagements and I'm able to vocalize the truth of my soul. And then the last is my words. Written word is so important to me. And I'm so grateful that you shared my article the other day that I,
Yes.
I published with
I
Jennifer
will link it
Magazine.
below as well in the description. It's
So amazing.
beautiful.
I was so grateful. But I really have come to understand that my words are a part of my purpose. I had a prophet speak to me quite a few years ago, and he said, "You're a freedom breeder." And what I've come to understand is like my movement, my voice, and my words are all a part of that toolkit for freedom breeding.
Oh my God. I love that term freedom breeder. I love
Yeah.
that term. You
When
do
he said
you
that, I was like, "Wow!"
I know. But and that's the power of words, right? Like life and death is in the power of the tongue. Like your word is your wand. Like it is so powerful. The words that we internalize, just the words that we hear in our heads, the words that we consume from other people, like those external words get lodged in our subconscious. It's like I love that you shared that because writing works for some people. It might not work for other people. I just wrote a book. I found it so challenging to translate the feeling because I'm more of a sentient, like my strength is the sentient part of things. So translating that, so having that gift is so beautiful. And I love that you talked about it as things that you just did intuitively, naturally, didn't realize, that you were doing it because so often it's the things that come so easy to us that we don't really pay
Yes.
attention to.
Yes. And this is why
Yes.
I decided to be a dream doula because I'm so glad you brought that up. I realize how many of us lacked awareness of our gifts and of the most potent part of who we are. We run from it because we are told by society that, this is what you have to learn, this is how you have to learn it, this is how you are successful. And oftentimes, especially for folks with marginalized identities, especially for these multi-passionate individuals, my what I call neurospicy folks, so those like neurodivergent people, right? Like because we are anti-status quo, our gifts are often minimized. Our gifts are often whitewashed and erased, and we're conditioned to believe that they don't have as much value. And so when you're in the sacred space of partnership with me, my job is to reflect back to you who you are. My job is to pay attention to who you say you are and make sure that you are embodying that, and highlighting what your truth actually is, because so often like the first 10 minutes of a conversation with a client is them spouting out what they've heard about themselves or what they've heard they should be. And
Mm.
then we get down to the nitty gritty through the questions that we ask, that I'm asking, through the prompts that I'm sharing, through the rituals that I guide them through. And I'm like, holy crap, the underbelly of what you actually want to say is so different from what you've been conditioned to believe and conditioned to repeat. And so that's why I commit to this work. You know who you are, you feel who you are, there's value to it, but the external world, if you don't have a safe container that mirrors who you are back to you, it can be really challenging to embody that consistently. And so I want to provide that space for people to meet with themselves and to document who they are, to create rituals and tools and resources out of their own lived experience and out of their own core identity, their soul's essence. Like, we need more. I love that you've created a book, because yes, that's going to empower the masses, but like, that's going to empower you. You get to
Mm.
go back to that artifact time and time and time again, and take in your own wisdom. That's what I guide my clients to do.
Yes, I'm glad you said that because it definitely has been that for me of like stepping into these different versions of me and having them emerge through the writing and through the process. It hasn't just been the writing, it's as it's all been unfolding and pouring out of me, being really present in the experience. I think that having someone like you to guide people through is also helping them to just remain present, like actually absorb what you're going through because a lot of times we're so conditioned to avoid and run and justify and we don't actually sit with and really stand in what's happening like as the growth is happening. You know, we want to rush and we want to get to the finished result and we haven't actually noticed the blossoming, notice all the layers that have been shedding as we've moved toward that end result. I love how you frame uniqueness as a beautiful thing, as a colorful thing, as a vibrant thing, as a gift. Like that's so important for people to hear, which is why I wanted you on the podcast because for most of my life, my otherness was painful. Like I was like, something is wrong with me for being unique. Something is wrong with me for being this intuitive, for knowing what I know as a kid. For I was afraid of it. Like I was truly afraid of it. And I think a lot of people, and maybe you found this in working with your clients, are afraid of their magic.
I found it in my own life, and certainly in the people that I'm in community with. Um, we're taught to fear our freedom. That's
Yes.
like that's you know, collective liberation is is scary for those that design the structures that we live in.
Mm,
And we're in a moment, a huge moment of paradigm shift. Like, we're
yes.
seeing the rumbling of society as we know it. That is scary at AF for a lot of people. Um, and collective liberation is a part of that. That's why I feel currently right now like so fired up about empowering people with their own wisdom, with their own connection to divine energy, because it's going to make this paradigm shift less painful,
Mm,
because we're going to be activating our gifts and utilizing our gifts. We're in, I'm like, the astrologer in me is coming out. We're in the age of Aquarius. That's where
yes.
addiction and like playfulness and creativity is we're supposed to utilize that in this age,
Mm,
because we're literally shifting the universe and how we're experiencing the universe. Um, so if we are not tapping into creativity, if we're not tapping into spirituality, if we're not tapping into these more intuitive gifts, this shifting is going to be very challenging.
it's happening when it's happening either way, but you know,
Either way.
how are we gonna guide ourselves through it? Absolutely. Like when you talk about the work that you do to support people, it is so, so important. And I just want you to share kind of what you are like, what are your offerings right now? What are the ways people can get in touch with you and work with you? Because having us having us bring out our light and our magic and sharing it with the world is hopeful. It's a reminder that life isn't black or white, that there's so much color. So how can people work with you to start sharing that color?
Yeah. Just first and foremost, I want to thank you so much for this opportunity to be here and be connected to people who are soul aligned with me. I know without a doubt your community is full of creative, like, I people call me the human form of glitter. I know that this is a community of human glitter. And I feel so delighted to be in connection with you all. I want to remind you that there is nothing wrong with you. If for anything else, if you're like, Candace, I don't know what working with you will look like, but I know I want to be connected. That's why we're connected, so that I can always remind you there's nothing wrong with you. You don't have to fix yourself. You're not broken. You're feeling the things that you were designed to feel. And I love, I love your work, because you point people toward that. You point people to understanding that our emotions are actually just like signals and alarm clocks and guides and radars for us to say, oh, there's something important for my soul to pay attention to. There's something that I value that's not being honored. There's something that I need that's not being met. There's something that I desire that I'm not able to tap into. And so I want to pause and just like thank everybody for listening to this whole thing and being with us and tethering our souls together. It's felt very, very special.
Yes. Yes.
But then in terms of working with me, I have three core offers right now. The entry offer is what I call the Soul Care Vision Roadmap, and I often guide people to just start there. Essentially what we do together is we go through that soul care framework that I laid out earlier. We start self-discovery, and we do that through the lens of astrology. We do that through the lens of tarot. We're in a private Voxer channel. This is like a walkie-talkie app on our phones, and we go back and forth, and I will share your birth chart with you and the kind of details of who you are as it relates to the snapshot of the sky when you were born. I'll pull tarot cards for you based on the questions and the concerns and the thoughts and the decisions that you have to make. And then we start to look at, okay, what do the next 30 days need to look like to point myself back to what I need, value, and desire. And then I help you to cultivate some rituals of self-celebration. One of my favorites is I make these personal empowerment podcasts. I'll share a link to sign up for my newsletter. But when you sign up for my
Mm.
newsletter, you get one of those personal empowerment podcasts, aka pep talks from me. But we create those together in the space of the Soul Care Vision Roadmap, and then I'll package that all up together once we finish our time together and give you a report that honors all of those details, and you can use that to kind of guide yourself. And then from there, if you want to go deeper into the work with me, I have my Dream Life Loading VIP experience where I walk you through, I hold your hand, and you get accountability coaching as we go through your soul care vision roadmap. And then I also do soul care camps, which are in-person retreats where we activate all of the things that will help you kind of fall more in love with yourself, amplify your identity, amplify those things that you're like, oh, this is like a little bit suppressed in my life right now. I want to expand this. Just a lot of somatic embodiment work there. Those are magical, and they can be anywhere in the world. We can do them virtually, we can do them in person, and I absolutely love those. So I highly recommend starting with the Soul Care Vision Roadmap because it will get you through my whole framework and point you to where we go next if you want to continue the work. And for folks listening in, I'm going to give you a promo code for that. So we'll get $100 off, and instead of the $297 investment, it'll just be $197 for your community.
The gratitude. Thank you so much for being willing to do that. You guys, all the details will be in the description box. You need to follow Candace. Like you need to because your timeline needs this joy. And it's just a reminder that the fear can be dissipated with support, right? And if there's something inside you that's like, I know I'm not showing up truly, I know that I have these gifts, I know that I'm unique, but I'm scared, then I hope you can listen to both of us sharing about how human that is of you and how important getting support, getting someone like Candace to hold your hand and walk through it with you is going to be for you to bring that out into the world because it's practice. Like at the end of the day, it is practice, and it's so much easier to practice in community with somebody else. So thank you so 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 much, Candace, for showing up, for doing the work that you're doing. You're going to be busy in the next couple of years. Like the work that you're doing is blowing up.
Receive it.
um
I receive it.
yes, I'm speaking it over you. It is blowing up, it is global, it is serving so many souls. So if there is just one, you dropped so many gems, okay, but if there is one thing we can leave the listeners with, share that message with them.
It's something, it's inspired by something you just said. I think there is this, not think, there is this social conditioning that, we have to hustle alone. That lone wolf mentality is the only way to get through. And you know yourself better than anybody else. You have to trudge through the mud and like you have to do it by yourself. That is anti-human, right? Like OG humans lived in community. They were interdependent. In fact, we fear we fear loneliness, we fear being alone so much because biologically, if you were alone, that meant death. And that's still ingrained into our DNA. And so I want to rehabilitate the value of interdependence in our society, the value of connection and community in our society. You don't have to do the work of your life's journey alone. You get to do this in connection. You get to invest in being connected as you grow and as you expand and as you evolve. And so I want to normalize saying, I don't want to be alone in this journey. I don't want to have to do this by myself. And if you're feeling that, if you've been like, I've been doing this alone for a really long time and it's not felt good, like I'm giving you permission. You don't need my permission, but I'm going to give it to you, that you can shift and you can start to do this work in community, connected to people who love you, who relate to you, and who will affirm you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you guys so much for listening today. Again, everything will be in the description box, and I hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you did, reach out to Candace and let her know. Reach out to me and let me know. And just having that feedback, knowing that it touched you guys means the world. Thank you again for listening. Please be gentle with yourself, and I will see you guys on the next episode. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. It would mean so much if you could subscribe, leave a review, share with your friends and family, and let me know what you think by going to my Instagram at mighty_emotions and connecting with me and letting me know what you loved about today's episode. It really means a lot that you support this podcast, and I love coming to you each week with a new episode. So be sure to subscribe, let me know what you think, and take care of yourself.